Benin, a country of 13 million people in West Africa, a former French colony, sharing its borders with Nigeria, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Togo. Soccer, no surprise, is the number one sport. Basketball, handball, and volleyball are also big sports there. Baseball is nowhere near that group of sports in popularity, but it's on the way up. A sport that hardly existed there 15 years ago, but now claims over 1,000 players, all levels combined. Still in the early stages of development, but making a lot of progress in a short amount of time. Baseball really got its start in Benin in 2010 when Gary Tonziger visited the country to give eye exams and fit glasses to those who needed it. While he was there, he met a young man named Fernando Atanan. Fernando had previously lived and studied in the United States, and while there played on a baseball team. But back in Benin there was no organized baseball, no equipment, and hardly anyone knew anything about it. A year later, Tonziger and Wally Langfellow, both of them former Little League coaches in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, founded Baseball in Benin, a non-profit organization aimed at bringing baseball to this African nation. In 2013, Fernando traveled to Robbinsdale and was certified as a coach and umpire, even got to meet Torrey Hunter while he was there. Then he returned to Benin to teach the game to kids throughout the country. He would later go on to become the president of baseball and softball in Benin, a title he holds to this day. In 2016, Tonziger and Langfellow made a trip to Benin to purchase land for a baseball field to be built, and to select players for a team to go back with them to Minnesota. 12 players and 3 coaches made the trip. They played in a local tournament, were written about in the papers, and featured in the local news, gaining valuable playing experience before returning to Africa. In 2018, the two men returned to Benin to gather another group of players to make the trip to Minnesota, and also to begin the first sanctioned Little League season. While there, they noticed that the players were much more competitive than they had been a couple years before, and there were now over 400 kids playing. Like with other developing baseball programs, everything was interrupted by COVID, and another planned trip for 2020 was canceled. But during the COVID years, Brian Covell, a former college baseball player from Maine, handled baseball in Benin. He put together a national team and got them to start competing. You won't find Benin in the WBSC World Rankings, not yet anyway. They haven't had the chance to participate in any meaningful tournament where they could earn points and lift themselves into the rankings. But in March of 2024, they took a big step when they hosted an international match for the first time. Burkina Faso and Togo arrived for a doubleheader. The first game with Togo was full of disruptions and couldn't be completed. Game 2 was a 4-1 loss to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is further along in their baseball development. A couple years ago, they were in the world rankings, so a 4-1 loss is actually a good loss. And they're not stopping there. Next up is a trip to Ivory Coast this May, planning for international matches every year. Hopefully it grows into several a year. The best way for the national teams to improve is by getting more chances to compete with other nations, and they're now taking the first steps for that. And the best way for individuals to improve is by playing abroad. First steps for that have been taken as well, at least for one player anyway. Sadok Nargio, born and raised in Benin, is a catcher playing on the team at Century College, now in his second year. Not much, but it's a start. This has worked for other countries, year after year sending players abroad. Those players return and play in the home country. Before long there are half a dozen players who've played abroad. Those who haven't get better by playing with and against those returnees, and the whole team becomes stronger. The exciting thing about baseball here is that it's at the very beginning. First national team competitions, first players going abroad, and those first young players who went to Minnesota in 2016, they've just reached adulthood, aged about 19 or 20. So there's no telling what heights they can reach. They've still got a lot of time. From now till the time their playing careers end, maybe 20 to 25 years from now, they could see enormous changes in the country's baseball program. Then you've got the next generation of kids who are really bringing Benin baseball up in the world. In 2023, they placed second in the first ever West Africa Regional Little League Tournament. In 2024, they won the West Africa Little League Tournament, beating Nigeria and Burkina Faso. This qualified them for the Europe-Africa Region Qualifier, held annually in Poland. But unfortunately, due to visa issues, they were unable to go. A major achievement becoming the #1 Little League team in West Africa, but followed by a missed opportunity. The chance to compete against the strongest countries in Europe would have been a great experience for them. But these sort of issues often occur with young baseball programs. Then they find a way to make sure it never happens again, and the progress continues. In the nation's largest city of Cotonou are the country's only baseball fields, 2 fields occupying one space. They're using a portable backstop at this time, but a permanent backstop is on the way, probably sometime this year. Baseball is not yet part of the physical education curriculum in schools, so they have to visit schools to recruit players. They'll go to elementary and secondary schools, talk to the principals, and get a certain number of kids available for the weekend to practice baseball. There's also a 5-day baseball camp held every fall. They give the kids snacks, get them out onto the field, let them play, have fun, and learn how to enjoy the game. Just a couple ways they can recruit new players, until baseball becomes part of the school's sports program. Getting players hasn't been much of a problem. They have 6 Little League teams at the moment, just right for a baseball program as young as this one. But keeping the players has been an issue. Often kids will join, start making progress, become good players, and then drop out. The main reason being they don't get enough opportunities to play games, which is understandable. With more players and more funding, they'll be able to retain more of them, but at the moment it's still a problem. In addition to the local coaches and a few visiting Americans, there's also help from Japanese workers temporarily dispatched to Benin. At this time, Yushi Fushimi, who's a member of the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, is helping out with baseball in Benin. And we've seen this in other African countries as well. As long as there's a Japanese presence, through the embassy or some volunteer group, there will always be someone to help grow the game inside the country. The hurdles Benin baseball faces for developing the game are not much different from other countries where baseball is just getting its feet off the ground. As a minor sport, baseball is not high on the country's priority list. As a result, funding is low. They don't have the money to get all the right equipment, build the right facilities, and organize tournaments and travel to tournaments outside the country. So they rely on used equipment donated from abroad. Soccer fields are often used for baseball, and the baseball-specific fields they do have get upgraded in small occasional doses. One advantage they have is being in the West Africa region, neighboring other countries that are on a similar level. You often see when a country is trying to get baseball up and going, but they have trouble finding the right competition. Sometimes their neighbors don't play baseball at all, and they have no one to play against but themselves. Sometimes their neighbors are too good, or they're too good for their neighbors, and they gain nothing by trying to compete with each other. We can see this with Africa's top 2 baseball countries. South Africa's stuck with no one to play down there. Uganda's got a couple countries in East Africa to compete with, but they're a little too far ahead now. At the same time, they lack the funding to travel far away and face meaningful competition. In West Africa, though, there is not one dominant country. There's Benin, Nigeria, Ghana, Burkina Faso, and others. Some are a little further along than others, but they're all within striking distance of one another. The more they play each other and try to outdo each other, the better they'll get. A major disadvantage of being in this region: no presence of professional baseball organizations. No MLB academies or anything like that. There will be someday for sure, but for now, nothing. So in order to polish their skills and get the advanced training they can't get on the local ball field, they would need to travel far away, and that takes money, which they don't have enough of. For now, their best hope is to display their abilities on social media, hope someone will notice their raw talent and offer a contract or a scholarship. So getting noticed is a challenge. But not long ago that was a challenge throughout Africa, and most of Europe too. It's changed in those places now, and will change in Benin too. Before long there will be players from Benin in U.S. colleges, minor leagues, and other leagues of the world. But they're still taking the earliest steps right now. And I'll leave it with this. If you'd like to make a donation and help baseball in Benin, visit baseballinbenin.org. Your donation can really help. Even a small amount goes a long way in a country where baseball is just starting to get the wheels rolling. Anyway, that's all for this one. Until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya.